Hi, this is David at TED-IELTS, and I'm back with another video. Today we're looking at vocabulary rather than grammar. And specifically, we're looking at words that IELTS candidates almost always get wrong. So I run an IELTS writing correction service where I mark people's essays and I make edits on them. And so I've gone through hundreds of essays already this year and many thousands of essays over the past 5 years. And these are words that I just see again and again and again being misused. So I really want to help people to learn how to use them correctly and avoid some big mistakes that they often make. Let's just jump right into it. The first word is illustrate, and actually this is probably one of the most overly misused words in IELTS. So people think it means to show. So when you get IELTS writing task 1 data, people often like to say the line graph illustrates or the bar chart illustrates. That is very debatable whether it's correct or not. I would say don't use illustrate at all. But the biggest problem is when we're showing something that has no illustration element to it at all, like a table. So the definition here comes from the Cambridge Dictionary, and all the definitions we'll look at today come from Cambridge. So to illustrate is to show the meaning or truth of something, particularly using examples. So if you said the table illustrates the amount of electricity used in 10 different countries, that is wrong because the table is not illustrating anything. Now, if you had a bar chart, maybe you could say the bar chart illustrates the amount of electricity used because it's kind of taking numeric data and turning it into an illustration. So it's making it sort of visual, but still not really within the exact parameters of this definition. So instead, when you're beginning your task 1 description, just say the table shows or the table provides information about this thing. Our next word is fluctuate. So I think everybody knows that fluctuate means going up and down. But IELTS candidates make a big mistake because they often use fluctuate just to mean if something goes up and then down and then stays at the same level. But actually, fluctuate means going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, right? So if we look at these 2 line graphs here, the first one really is not fluctuating. The second one, we can see a lot of up and down change. This is fluctuating. We can see the dictionary definition here includes the word continuously, and that's quite an important thing. Our next word, and this is another super common one in IELTS writing, but also in IELTS speaking, and it's several. Several does not mean the same as many. It's more than one, and it's less than many. We quite often say several is like 3 or 4 of something. Now, IELTS candidates will often say several people believe something. Well, you're talking about the whole world. So is it really like 3 or 4 people out of 8 billion? No. So just say many people believe or some people believe that this is the case. Depends what exactly you want to say. Here are some examples of how we could get it right. The teacher gave several of her students extra homework, or this essay will provide several reasons why students can benefit from homework. So in each of these cases, it's probably referring to 2 or 3 or 4 people, students, reasons. Our next word is individual. So this is definitely the most commonly misused word in IELTS essays, although I will admit in some cases it's sort of debatable. IELTS candidates use it as a synonym of people. Okay, sometimes that is acceptable. I was looking at about 50 IELTS essays yesterday, helping my friend to assess them and see what their levels were. And the writers of these essays very clearly had heard, don't use people. This is terrible advice. You should definitely use the word people in your IELTS essays. But if you want to avoid repeating people because you feel you've used it too many times, please don't just use individuals as a synonym. It is not a direct synonym. Individual means a single person distinct from a group of people. So if you're talking about someone, okay, so here's our example. Many individuals believe that students should have less homework. No, don't say this. Many individuals, why individuals? We're not looking at them as individual people. We're just looking at people here in general. But in the next example, teachers should treat students as individuals. Okay, well, this focuses on their individuality. There are benefits for both individuals and society as a whole. Great. Now we're focusing on the individual, one person distinct from the group, and then we're looking at also the group. We can also use this as an adjective, but I'm focusing on it here as a noun, which is how it's frequently misused. So again, please don't, in your IELTS essays, just score out the word people and say individuals instead. It is not a direct synonym in many cases. Right, the next word is related to that, and in fact, the next few words are related. This is generation. So a generation is all of the people about the same age within a society, and we can also use it within a particular family. So grandparents, parents, children, these are each generations. So we talk about generations as groups of people like Gen X, Gen Z, millennials, baby boomers. I know I didn't put them in the right order there, but groups of people that share a sort of an age range, but also sort of cultural, societal values. But again, it is not an acceptable synonym for people. So if you're going to talk about old people or young people, don't just say old generations and young generations. Now, there are some cases when you might be talking about several younger generations, so several individual groups, but usually it's wrong. So here's our examples. Young people tend to adapt better to new technologies, but old generations struggle. I know why some people think this might be right, but clearly the writer here has decided that they don't want to say people. They want to replace it with a fancier, more advanced word and have chosen generations. This is wrong. Young people tend to adapt better to new technologies, but the elderly often struggle, or old people often struggle. There we go. There's different ways of saying this, but don't misuse generations. It refers to all the people of that age. And that would be one generation. When you say generations plural, then you're putting together two groups. So you're talking about the grandparents and the great-grandparents, or you're talking about Generation X and the baby boomers and the silent generation. Now, I talked there about the elderly, and this is a word that really confuses people. Now, you don't often see this word, but when you do see this word in IELTS essays, it's usually misused. And the most common one, well, there are various ways, but the most common one is saying elderlies. So people know what this word means, but they can't quite use it correctly. So actually, again, like generation, it means people considered as a group. In this case, it's old people as a group. So we cannot say elderlies. It's never going to be correct. We talk about the elderly as one whole group, or we can use it as an adjective, elderly people, elderly relatives. You can see my examples here. We're going to stick with the subject of people. Now, the word people, as you could probably tell, is a bit of a problem in IELTS because candidates, they just don't want to say this word for some reason. So they keep trying to find other words. And I know that if you go to thesaurus.com or any other thesaurus that you like, and you type in the word people, you're going to get a list. You're going to get individuals and civilians and citizens and all these words that you see here, but they're not the same thing. They all have a distinct meaning and they should be used in a distinct way. So a civilian is a person who is not a member of the police or the armed forces. When we talk about civilians, we're almost always talking about the military, about armies, about war. So you've got soldiers and civilians. So when you just talk about people in general and you start using the word civilians, it's wrong. It's completely wrong. Many civilians want governments to ban deforestation. Nope, that's wrong. Many people want governments to ban deforestation. Okay. Or we can switch focus. The army has been condemned for deliberately targeting civilians. So civilians as in non-military personnel. So this is how we use it correctly. Likewise, citizens. So this is another one. People don't want to say people. So a citizen is a person, yes. And in certain cases, sure, citizens and people are the same thing, of course. I mean, all citizens are people. But it's framed in a certain way. It is a person who is a member of a country or a person living in a specific place, referring to their residential status. So again, if you use it generally, many citizens argue that students should learn practical skills. Nope, not acceptable, not correct, not logical. We could just replace it with people. And as long as you're not using people like 10 or 15 times in your essay, it's not a problem. But if we frame it, the new laws will impact all the citizens of that country or the citizens of that city. That's fine because it's referring to people according to the place where they live, so it has context, it has meaning, and it is correct. Another word that kind of refers to people, but it's pretty different, is proponents. So a proponent is a person who speaks publicly in support of a particular idea or plan of action. So how do IELTS candidates get this wrong? Well, they often learn the loose meaning of this word, and then in their essay, they're talking about an idea, and they're talking about people who support that idea, and they use proponents. So that makes sense, actually. The problem is they're not really using referencing back to a previous idea. So often they say proponents, and the reader is wondering, proponents of what? Because there's no context given, right? So here's our example. Children these days have too many toys. Proponents argue that it helps them to learn. It's just not clear enough. Now, if we give more context, it could work. So our next example, proponents of giving giving children lots of toys or giving lots of toys to children argue that it helps them to learn. Okay, well now we are a proponent of something. Or we could reframe it a little. Many parents believe that giving their children lots of toys is beneficial. Proponents of this idea argue that it helps them to learn. So now we're referring back to the previous statement, but even then we're saying proponents of this idea. We don't have to say proponents of something. We can definitely just say proponents, but the previous sentence or clause, usually sentence, has to very clearly state something that these people are in favor of. It can't be vague. It can't be unclear. It has to have a concrete meaning, or else your reader is left going, what are they proponents of? It has no meaning. Similarly, we have the word one. Now, one obviously has lots of meaning in English, but I'm referring to the idea of a person. When we often say one should, or one thinks, or one does, so used as a pronoun. Now, how do IELTS candidates get this wrong? They use it where they should use the word they. So one means any person, but not a particular person. So let's understand it better by looking at how we get it wrong. So some people avoid doing sports, and one often lives a sedentary lifestyle. On the one hand, it kind of sounds correct, but it's not right because previously we were referring to some people. Now, we've then changed focus a little because one is, well, it's one person, right? But it's an imagined one that also encompasses like all people. For when we have some people, we're going to have to replace it with they because that's the plural form. When we use one, we're not going to have any previously mentioned group. We're going to be referring to people in general, but in the singular form. So it's quite a difficult word to use, as you can see. So you can see how I would change one to they, but then in the last example here, one should try to lead an active lifestyle, which often includes sports. So this is the correct usage. It's talking about one imagined person as all people, basically. Okay, we're now coming on to a word that I think the candidate knows the meaning of, and so maybe you could argue that actually they're getting the grammar wrong. So maybe the word is not the wrong part, but I feel still it's kind of wrong. So it's the word recently. Recently means not long ago. I think you all know this, but the problem is it refers to the past, and then IELTS candidates always use the present simple tense. They say, recently, many people watch short form videos on their mobile phones. Well, why are you talking about the past and using the present simple tense? It's because they think on some level that recently means now. Recently is the present. Well, why don't you just say that? Let's say nowadays, these days. Or if you're going to say recently, change to use the past form. Or, maybe the present perfect form. We need a different verb tense, basically. We need something that refers to the fact that recently is not now in the present moment. Right. That's all the specific words I wanted to look at today. But the final one, I was going to make a page for each of these, but they all kind of mix together in this annoying sort of way. They're all words that IELTS candidates use in the introduction for their Task 2 essays. And they just kind of use them interchangeably. I think it's like those words that they use to replace people with. They all have slightly different, or in some cases, very different meanings. And the IELTS candidates know the general meaning, but they don't know the specific meaning. So we can see here, I advocate that animal testing is wrong. Well, usually we just say, I advocate something, and then that something is doing something. I advocate animal testing, or I advocate banning animal testing would be possible. So for all of these words, you need to know their general meaning. You really want to know the specific meaning as well. And you really, really need to know how it's used in a sentence. This is why when you're learning vocabulary for English, and especially for an English test like IELTS, don't just learn one word and its meaning, and then the next word and its meaning. When you learn a word, look at examples. I used to tell people, search Google and find some news reports and blogs written by native speakers or professional writers and see that word used in context. Nowadays, I guess you can just use AI. You can use ChatGPT or Gemini or something, and you can search, and it makes it a lot easier. But the important part is to find, what do these words collocate with? How are they used inside a sentence? What is their precise meaning? Because these words are often misused. And if you want a high IELTS band score, then you need to understand many parts of a word, and you've got to be able to use those words precisely for the right meaning so that you convey your ideas correctly. Right, that's enough for today. I hope this lesson has been very useful for you. If it has, please give it a thumbs up. You can leave a comment if you have any questions for me. And if you have an IELTS test coming up soon, I hope that you get a great score with it. Good luck, and I'll see you next time.